All right, let's do this. It is just about five after here in Seattle again. It is a beautiful sunny day for the time being here in Seattle, Washington. My name is Colin O'Keefe. I am Director of Product here at LexBlog, and I look forward to today's webinar on promoting your blog posts on social and beyond. Um, so I'm going to walk through a few things on what we'll hit on here today. Let's make sure we got the right spot. Here's the agenda that we'll have on tap so you can understand what we're going to talk about. May not be exactly what you're expecting. I know we've got a good blend of attendees between people who are individual lawyers themselves, various marketing professionals. So hopefully we have something for everyone here. The agenda for today's webinar, we're going to touch on the idea of the blog as a home base, kind of the starting point and how everything kind of revolves around there. Some fundamentals on modern social media, some tools to use, core social media formats to use, and then just finding your workflow. I'll be honest, a lot of today's webinar is going to be about media and content that is different than blogging, but is used to extend the life of your blog, to extend and repurpose and reuse some of the content that you use on your blog, and also direct people back to where they can find more of it. So what we're not so much going to talk about is like captions and links and stuff like that, but more so, how do you stop the scroll? How do you get people's attention in a very crowded, cluttered, and constant social ecosystem? So a quick little bit of background before we begin. I am director of product now at LexBlog. My last job immediately before this one was helping run social for the Seattle Mariners. So a lot of my expertise on this comes from things that I've done in the past and I've seen perform well. What's interesting, all the time people say, hey, social media is always changing. You got to keep up with the biggest trends. You got to keep up with what's out there. We've actually honestly hit a little tiny bit of stagnation in terms of what works and works well. You can see some of the stuff on here. We have an explainer video on the far left on what makes baseball in Tokyo different than baseball in the United States. A little quick little graphic in the middle here that's just basically explain something really quickly. And then over on the right, we have this is a clip from a podcast, a quote it would roll through. It's a video normally. But these are a lot of the things we still see out on the web today. They're a big, big part of the web today. But these are things that I've done. I'm not what one might consider a creative. My background is more in writing, in print journalism and blogging than it is in like graphic design or video creation or anything like that. And I imagine that's the same for a lot of folks on this call. But that doesn't mean that you can't do some damage in that space. And we'll hit on a key concept with regards to that in a few minutes. I want to start with kind of the the wide angle view here, the blog's role in the social space, and then also as well, kind of some fundamentals with regards to social media as it exists right now here in 2024. We talk about this a whole lot, but there's a reason why we do it. The blog is your home base. I mentioned, for example, that the things are always changing on the web, and there also is a level of stagnation. One thing that is true with regards to your blog is that it is yours. It will only change if you want it to change. As social fads grow and decline, as different rules change, as various, for lack of a better term, the meta changes with what performs well on social, that the blog is always there as a central location, central repository for your knowledge on a particular subject. One of the things that I found on social and in marketing in general is that people will take things as seriously as you take them yourself. So if you view the blog as, it's just a marketing distribution channel, the lawyers themselves don't take it that seriously. You just copy and paste their Word documents, put them on there, and it goes out. that will shine through and people will be able to tell that you're not taking this as seriously. But if you do make this a core part of your identity, so you may be, partner at a massively large law firm doing some enormously large work, potentially work even in front of the Supreme Court. But if you say, yeah, I'm a partner at Ballard Spahr, but I'm also a editor of the Consumer Finance Monitor, and you take pride in that and you demonstrate your pride in that, as that's a big part of who you are, is authoring this resource, that will shine through. So always look at it as a publication. And also, yeah, if you take it seriously, if you look at it as a core part of your identity, hey, I'm not just a lawyer. I'm also, a watchdog. I'm also somebody that is constantly surveying this space. I'm covering this space in and out. Um, that pays dividends. You can operate elsewhere. You can go out, whether it's digitally or in person, but you can always come back to the blog. So whether it's, you may do a podcast, you may do a social video, you may do a conference speaking engagement. You can always say and be able to come back, provided you've treated it seriously up until that point. Hey, thanks for attending my talk today on yada, yada, yada. Hey, be sure to follow up on my blog. I'm the editor of so-and-so. We'll have a recap of today's speaking engagement, or that's where you can find my slide notes or stuff like that. And a big part of that is just, this is a space that in a lot of cases, the lawyers directly control. It's not the easiest thing in the world, for example, for a lawyer to say, hey, yeah, go check out my, after this speaking engagement, we'll make sure to get my notes online and my slide deck online. You may have to work with your website vendor, may not be able to get it up right exactly where you want it. Whereas the blog, it's like, oh, yeah, can do that from my laptop before I even leave the conference. But it's a great place to come back to. It's a great place you completely own, and is really focused on the subject that you go and branch out over into other stuff. But yeah, this has the deepest library of knowledge. And honestly, depending on how seriously take it, you can also look at, hey, if something's going out from a branded account, if you're talking about, hey, here's what you need to know about the FTC's ruling on non-competes, that may be better going out from a trade secrets associated Twitter account than it is going out from a broader account, or maybe better going out from a personal one. But the firms that I see, the lawyers that I see use their blog as a home base and take pride in it, they're the ones who see the most results from it, because they take it seriously and their audience does as well. But I want to give you some fundamentals of the social web as it exists right now. As always, consider your own social consumption. I think, yeah, in the world today, a lot of people get wrapped up in metrics, and trying to find the right hack and trying to emulate exactly someone else. Just think about your own social consumption and what that looks like, where you spend most of your time, what gets your attention. Social today is highly, highly visual. It's very media rich. I'm old enough to remember a time when the Facebook wall was a .txt file. I remember there was a time before Facebook had a news feed, and when they first dropped it, they were like, "Oh, this is the stalker feed," and people were freaking out. But now that type of algorithmic feed is just how people get their news. Stopping the scroll and occupying space in it is very, very literal. It seems so strange, but the reason that like vertical images and vertical video tend to perform well on social, particularly in places where there's mixed media, so not even just TikTok or something like that that is dedicated to a specific medium. But the reason that like vertical images and vertical video perform well is just takes up more space on your screen. As weird as it sounds, if you're scrolling on LinkedIn and there's a vertical graphic, it's just going to take up more space in the feed than something else. So it's a weird concept, but it is very literal. A key point that I think people lose sight of because they worry, about making traffic go up. I know there's probably a lot of people on this call who would point to certain reports. They're constantly saying, hey, the blog traffic has gone from X to Y, and therefore that means I'm doing a great job. And And there is some validity in that. You want to make sure that people are reaching that deeper library of content, but don't be afraid of the notion that sometimes the content that appears on social media can stand on its own. Sometimes people for a long time have looked at social as, hey, this is where we tease something and then we drive traffic elsewhere. We're going to tease this and we'll drive stuff elsewhere. On today's web, a lot of times the beginning and end of an engagement with a user is entirely on social. So they can get all the information that they need from a single social post. Even though we are the blog company, this is what we do. We take a lot of pride in it. Ultimately, our goal is not to drive traffic to your blog, to make sure that your blog has traffic. Our goal is that the lawyers that we work with get work, that they enhance their reputation, that they extend their network and move beyond that. So, and sometimes that doesn't mean somebody always clicks through to the blog. It may be actually taking the blog and bringing the content out over here. One key thing is there is no universal formula. That's like, if you do this, it will work. If you do this, you will go absolutely crazy on TikTok. You will be a massive hit. TikTok especially is one of those formats where you don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So there isn't any haze. You may have a partner be like, hey, my kid's on TikTok. How do we get on there? How do we show up higher? How do we go viral on TikTok? That's a tough nut to crack, because sometimes people get popular for the craziest reasons. Sometimes they get popular because, they're a zany criminal defense lawyer with a lot of jewelry. I don't know if you've seen that guy on TikTok. But there's no universal formula that will do well, but I'm going to walk through a few methods and hopefully give you an idea there. But trust your judgment, trust your feel. If something feels cringe, if it doesn't feel helpful, if you feel like you're going through the motions, you're probably doing it a little bit wrong. So trust your judgment, trust what you're doing. I feel like a lot of people lose sight of the idea that we're all just people out here, but we are. If you do something really cringe or ugly, or you think it doesn't look quite right, trust your gut when it's saying that, but also, try new things that can be helpful and stuff like that as well. One of the nicest parts of the modern web, because there is this overlapping best practice that's extended now for a few years, which is vertical media rich content. That content can work in multiple places. So if you cut a clip for TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or something along those lines, you can use it for all those. You can use it on the LinkedIn main feed. You can use it on Facebook. You can use it on Twitter/X. A lot of the types of content that you produce can be used in multiple places. It may look a little bit different and perform a little bit different in different places, but it's really nice that if you put the work into a nice piece of content, a nice piece of multimedia content, you can use it in multiple places. And a lot of what we'll talk about today is taking that blog content and turning it into this other stuff. So it's really all about slicing and dicing stuff up and using it in different formats. And I want to talk about, this is going to be a kind of fundamental part of what we'll talk about today. So when you look at there's basically kind of like, there's a lot of different ways you can post content on the web, particularly when it comes to LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Those are the things that I'm kind of talking about when I'm talking about this. There are embedded links, and then there is attached media. So if you just drop in a link URL and go to post, or you could even be an iMessage, it's going to pull what is called the Open Graph data. So you will have your title. In our case, we have what we call social cards, which is an Open Graph image generator. So it'll use your blog's branding, the title, and things like that to create a nice card that when people do just drop in a link, which is the most common thing that people do, that it looks good, that it stands out in the social feed. So sometimes people wonder, hey, why is the title, excuse me, why is the title repeated twice? Why do you put the text right there? It's like, well, it stands out. That's just what people do these days. You don't trust on In this case, it's X's tiny little title, or on LinkedIn, it's a tiny little title. We make sure that it stands out and it's brash and it's bold, even in those embedded links. What we're going to talk about a lot today are what we call kind of attached media. I don't know if that's the official term, but it's more along the lines of when you go to post a social post, you're clicking add an image, add a video, one of those two things, and attaching it to the post. So today we're going to talk a lot about the creation of that media along those things. I will say, as a precursor, and in case Kevin, our CEO, is watching, a big part of social, a huge part of social, is about networking through the web. On our last webinar, or no, it's 2 webinars ago, when we're talking about networking and engagement, that's really at the core of what we're doing. But what we're talking about today is for people who are looking to take the polish of their feed up another level, especially the marketers on this call, so they can see what other firms are doing and to see how they can, extend the life of the posts that they're putting out there. But again, networking is absolutely at the core of everything that goes on social media. And if you're looking for that, or you want to hear more about that, go into our webinar library. I'll make sure they're up and out there. They're in our support center, support.lexblog.com. They're also on lexblog.com as well. And we'll follow up with a link to the full library of those. But what we're going to talk about today is using some newer forms of social media, newer tools to be able to share content out there. If I'm going to leave you with one piece of advice on this webinar, and I may have dropped this in previously, this is one I picked up during my time at the Mariners. We used to go to a couple conferences a year. Facebook and Twitter would all have all the various sports, social, and professionals down there, and you get to go to their offices and hear from them, and you'd hear from other people who are really crushing it in this space. And I can't remember who said this exactly, but it's one of my favorite bits of advice, particularly for somebody like myself who isn't traditionally a creative. And that's know enough to be dangerous. You don't have to be some great image editor. You don't have to know the intricacies of masking in Facebook. You don't have to know about motion graphics and creating social video that's super robust. But it helps to know a little bit. You want to know a little bit of how to use these tools. You want to know enough to try some things. You want to know enough to be dangerous. You of course want to abide by brand guidelines and things of that ilk, but know enough to kind of take a stab, to kind of start dabbling. If you wall yourself off from these things because they seem a little bit more advanced, you're really missing out, especially because the tools that people use are getting easier and easier to use. And you're seeing more and more tools that are really focused and dedicated to the specific types of media that I'm going to describe today. So I kind of debated how to do this the right way. Should I show you the tools and then the content, or should I show you the content and then the tools? We'll start with the tools. So you may rewind later or something like that. The recording will always be there, but make note of these. A lot of people may have heard of these. Some people haven't, but we'll walk through a couple quick ones. For social images, so we're going to talk about a couple best practices in social images and a couple different options. We're going to look at social images and social video. There's different tools for social images and for social video. And to be clear, image is it's a non-moving image file. For videos, it's video. For social images, Canva is the industry leader. Adobe Express is another option, but there are a lot of free tools out there. You can get pretty far with Canva for free. It is, again, the industry leader, but be mindful that Canva, what's called Canva Core, is a thing. So people will notice if you're using one of these free tools, if you're using this. So just be mindful of what's out there. But I will say, even just putting together the materials for this presentation, while Canva Core may be out there and big for, like, I don't know, your acai bowl shop down there where every marketer is using that, it's not as advanced in the law space. I will say consistency is key, though. If you're using all different templates and all different colors and you're going crazy all over the place, that's going to look a little bit weird. Stick to your style guide. Keep it simple. Also, this last point, you can know Photoshop without, or you can use Photoshop without knowing graphic design. So when I, for example, started at the Mariners, didn't know anything about Photoshop. I'm still not very good at it. But one of the things that we would do is you would have somebody like an art director, a creative director, create a template. It could be a quote graphic, which we'll talk about. It could be a game recap graphic or something along those lines. I may not know all that goes into um, creating something that looks good, but I can change text boxes. I can slide in a different image here, there, or the other. Um, so if you are on this call and you're from one of the larger firms and you're wondering, yeah, how do we do this? Can I do this? The Adobe Creative Suite, of course, has a cost to it as well. But even if you're somebody that traditionally doesn't use Photoshop, if you know enough to be dangerous, you can have somebody hand you a template that they've created that looks sharp and say, hey, use this for quote graphics going forward, or use this for slideshows going forward, and just change the text. Yeah, it's really easy to do. I've created the template. It looks all great, and you have that, and you can rock and roll with it. But yeah, Canva's kind of the go-to. They're the industry leader. Adobe Express is another good one, but just use whatever works best. If you have a graphic design team at your firm, have them create a template that you can use and come back to so you can just keep running the same play over and over again. And we'll get to some of those plays here in a second. The tool for social video is CapCut. They're really the industry leader, probably even more so than Canva is for images. When you see a lot of the videos on TikTok or on Reels, those are coming from CapCut. It is, as I say here, it is built for the social web's current meta, which is vertical video, captioned. Sometimes you add other elements like images or what have you. It's good on mobile and on desktop. It's what we use. I've Claire, our marketing pro, is listening to this webinar now, and she'll slice up stuff from this webinar and she'll go share social clips using CapCut. It's good on both mobile and desktop. There are applications for both. So if you're on the move and you want to cut something, you can do that. Or if you want to sit down and spend some time with it, move some things around more carefully, you can do that as well. It's also great at captioning, which is a big part of the modern social web. And a reason why I should have included that on the fundamentals of social is that this has changed a little bit, but especially on places like Facebook, LinkedIn in particular, think about how often, for example, you're perusing LinkedIn with the sound on. Pretty rarely. A big part of the modern web, particularly outside of like TikTok or Reels, where people have their headphones in, is that content has to work without sound. And the way that it works without sound is that the captions are what we call burned in. They're not, somebody doesn't have to select turn on caption to see what somebody is saying. If they're scrolling past it in their feed, they will see what it's about and they will get a quick look at the things that the people are starting to say. That's why captions are so big. And that's why, yeah, their whole thing is it's CapCut. It's for captioning and cutting videos. Very simple. It is the industry leader and somebody to lean on in that space. So with that in mind, I want to hit on a few formats to follow, simple ones, plays that you can run over and over and over again. And I've taken a look at a few firms that are out there and what have you. And I will say, if you have questions, we can always hit on them during. Don't hesitate to ask. But also at the same time, we'll have time for questions at the end too. So some formats to follow here as I mess around and do this. One, quote graphics. Quote graphics, tried and true. They've existed for a long time. And I should have said I should have said this before. I went and grabbed examples mostly from the legal space, but be like when you're perusing social just on your own, be mindful of what catches your attention. A lot of the things that come to law or social in general start in other spheres. Sports graphic or quote graphics have been huge in the sports space for ever now, like for a very long time. So if you see, your sports team or your I don't know, entertainment show, your favorite podcast or something like that, um, sharing a piece of media that's a little bit different, make note of that. Maybe that's something that you can try and bring over. You might be like, oh yeah, they changed the color of that individual piece of text a little bit. Oh, they did this, that, or the other. Oh, they got a photo over there like that. You can adjust and use different types of things there. These types of things are probably going to be better from a brand account depending on who you're quoting. If you're sharing from at Art Vandelay as a lawyer and you're sharing a quote graphic of something that you said or wrote and it's like by you, might look a little bit cringe. It's probably better from a branded account. But that also doesn't mean you couldn't put together a quote graphic for, hey, say for example, the NLRB comes down with a massive ruling, or for in the case of the FTC and non-competes recently, or it could be a CFPB chair have a massive quote. You could also highlight that from a personal account, get that out there, and then tell folks to check out your full post on the subject. A key thing is you have to have a good quote. I think sometimes what people fall into the trap of, particularly as social professionals, is you just want to get some work done and get it out there and show your bosses that you're getting it done and getting it out there. It has to have like value to it. It has to actually connect with people. So you have to have a good quote. Like, if you're a sports team, you're not going to go out there and be like, yeah, that was big. That was a big time win for us. You're not going to put a quote graphic together for that. And the same for something that says, oh, employers have to be careful. In taking a look around for quote graphics from various firms, you'll see some that are kind of duds. So it's you have to have a good quote for the quote graphic, or at least it's ideal. You don't want to go through the work of creating this and putting it out there, although it can be very easy to just have it be some dull quote that doesn't really resonate with folks at all. So also to have a good quote, you have to have good writing to draw on. What you want to lean on for stuff like this, particularly as it pertains to the blog, is the stuff that comes from your own knowledge and expertise. So if you write about a big Supreme Court ruling, your quote graphic or the quote that you're highlighting shouldn't be you just describing what happened. If you have a takeaway at the end of the post or at the beginning that says, wow, this Supreme Court ruling is going to change the landscape of workplace class actions forever. Boom, that's a big quote graphic that you can put out there. But don't put out just the pure, duds. Hey, both teams played great today and stuff like that. Or, hey, be careful, employers. It's you want it to have some substance, and it doesn't have to be like a hot take per se, but it should be a take of some temperature that's not ice cold. Shouldn't be, this is something to keep an eye on. It should be, something that has some substance. And in order to do that, you do have to blog in that fashion. And I think most lawyers do, but it's something to be mindful of. That, if you're just putting stuff out there, that's stuff everybody already knows or anybody could summarize or put together the gist of, it's not going to perform as well. But quote graphics, really, really good. They can perform, they can work on any platform. I probably in most instances would go tall. I like 4:5 is the most common aspect ratio. Kind of the most flexible. This is probably 3:2. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But 4:5 is going to occupy a little more space in the various news feeds, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or those times. And also it just looks a little bit better on like Instagram if you want to run it there as well. Horizontal photos on Instagram are always one of those things that stands out as, do these guys know what are they trying to do this right? So be mindful of that. Also, you can have something that is really, really simple. And I'll say that's a big part of a lot of this social stuff is it doesn't always have to be the most polished thing in the world to perform well. It doesn't always have to be the most polished thing in the world to resonate with folks or catch their attention. I will say though, if you're looking for a firm that is absolutely crushing this or an attorney who is absolutely crushing this, I've mentioned Anthony Zoller a number of times before. He writes a California, I believe, employment law report. I know it's California employment. I can't remember the exact title. but his social feed, go take a look at Anthony Zoller on LinkedIn. You will see every kind of media that I'm talking about today. I almost could have made this whole section just posts from his feed because he does a great job in terms of mixing it up and trying different things. But here's something that's really simple, which is just a little teaser. It's a useful piece of information that people have to know right now. And if they want the details, they can click through the blog to get more details. And it's going to be the easiest post to execute. We've got text in a different color, and a logo. That's going to take you about 25 seconds to get done and export. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Make your point, relay the information that you want to relay. And sometimes, like I said at the beginning, this can stand on its own. Hey, you got to have this done. This date is approaching. It may remind you, hey, give me a call. We were talking about this. We got to make sure that this is done. It's great for dates, great for need to know information. It's great for, hey, this is coming down. This is the effective date. Just as a nice little, almost stern reminder or warning. This one is square, which is going to occupy more space than a horizontal image in a feed. You could still also go more vertical with the 4x5. But yeah, it's definitely going to be better than horizontal. If you're sharing something as attached media, you almost always want to go, I would even say always want to go with like a 4x5 or a 1x1. Once you start getting into the, the landscape type look, it's just occupying less space and it's going to be less effective. What some people will also do that you can play around with is sometimes everybody's trying to keep tabs on what's working and what's not working. Some people will say, and it may be true, that image posts perform better on LinkedIn. Image posts without a link associated with them at all in the caption perform better. So you can try stuff like, I'm going to post an image, and then in the comments, I'm going to add the link to the post. Like I said, there's no exact method to it. We found that, images do perform really well. So that, I guess, a starting point, but play around with where you include the link, how long the caption should be and stuff like that. I will say on social, a universal thing these days is the shorter the caption, the better. I don't know if that's the algorithm or if people responding to it, but the shorter the caption, the better. Sometimes people lean hard on, oh, I want to make sure everything's covered. I want to add some flourish that says, check out this for the latest, this, that, and the other for a, very long-winded thing. Sometimes it can be as simple as, hey, keep an eye on this, read more. Social captions can be really, really, really short, especially in places where the information is relayed in the image. You're really counting on that, and you don't have to flesh out the caption, and sometimes that can mess with you a little bit. So this is the simple post teaser. This is really the simplest execution here. The next kind of image-based, image-based format that we'll use is kind of the slideshow / gallery. So this is really good for translating a little bit more of a blog post into a visual medium. So as opposed to it just being, hey, keep an eye on this one date, you're going to walk through some key stuff here. And I'll give you a look at this on Instagram. Make sure we're squaring the right part. Yep, you can see this is on Instagram. It's from a firm called Bearcat Bossa Law. I just searched for this and found it recently. But you can see the FTC recently announced this. Did you know? When did it happen? You get the gist of it like that. You can click through here. The final rule dictates that it is an unfair method to this, that, or the other. And people can slide through and get the very gist of it. And you can use it to promote various things, whether it's a blog post or in this case, LinkedIn article. It could be for a webinar or something along those lines. But basically, this is a nice way that you can translate a bit more of a blog post into social media. So it's not the end of the world if people get all of the information that they need from social. Your goal as a lawyer on social with a blog is to educate and connect with people. It's not to get traffic. That's not the number one goal. So if you can accomplish that by, for example, using a slideshow, that's really good. You can get kind of creative with like how you design these things. You can have like some overlap so they're really sophisticated. During my time at the Mariners, we would create slideshows that actually were one big image that was really horizontal. So if it was 1200 by 1200 was the frame that we were planning to use, a square image, you would create an image that is instead like 1200 by say 4800, and then you would slice it into little 1200 thin clips. But you could have some elements that like weave through, so it creates that nice scrolling effect and it looks really polished. These are really good for if you write your post already in a pretty engaging and easily scannable way. So if it's like, hey, here's 5 things you need to know about this big NLRB ruling, or here is the latest developments with Colorado's AI law. That's a big one recently. Here's 4 things you need to know about that. Or if it's, hey, here's a checklist for your employee book. It's a great format for that. Like I mentioned, you can get clever with the design. The downside is it can be a little bit funky on some platforms. So like on Facebook, this is the type, this always looks the best on Instagram because it's just images, you just scroll, it's how it naturally works. On Facebook and LinkedIn, also Twitter if you use it there as well, though you're limited to the 4 photos. It just doesn't necessarily look as organic or as natural to the platform. Though I would say if you do create this, still run it there. It doesn't to say to not run it. It's just that it will post as like a gallery and people can still swipe through. It just doesn't look quite as eloquent as it does on Instagram, but it still looks very good. But these are the few image-based solutions that I would really lean on. So you have quote graphics, you can do a simple teaser, 1 image, or you can have your slideshow. You don't have to do all of these. And if you create, hey, we're going to have 2 looks for quote graphics. One's for a lawyer and one's for if it's somebody else. We're going to have 2 looks. We're just going to run it over and over and over again. And you may change, your looks may just be, okay, sometimes we're going to use this color from our style guide. Sometimes we're going to use that color from our style guide. It doesn't have to be the craziest thing. If you come out of this webinar and the only thing that you're going to change is, hey, we're going to mix in doing more quote graphics on a regular basis, you'll be doing well. Find things that you like, that you feel like fits your blogging style, and then just keep running that play. And so again, these are the image-based ones. There's more things you could do. You could do infographics. You could do all this stuff. But these are kind of the tried and true plays that I would run over and over again. Quote graphics, simple teasers, just 1 image, or potentially a gallery / slideshow. Now I want to get into video. Very flattering video of this, or screenshot still of this individual. This is growing increasingly more common, which is the simple selfie explainer video. Some of you may have seen me tease this webinar with one of those. You can cut them really quickly. They're highly personal. It's like, hey, I'm talking straight to you. You're getting my face. You're getting a real person talking directly to you. And you can explain things quickly and off the cuff. You can say, hey, here's what you need to know. Here's what I'm seeing. Sometimes you'll see people, I don't know, be walking on the street doing it. Don't record these in your car. Don't record them while you're driving. You'll still see people occasionally do that. You just always look like, hey, you probably shouldn't be recording video while you're driving. Obviously, don't do that, especially as a lawyer. It's always good to caption these things I mentioned. You want to have a couple different captions on there. I believe this is what we do. You want to have the title of the video, or at least the thesis of the video is another way to put it. 3 things I would not do at work. That's his. And then I'd also caption what you were saying. CapCut will do the captioning of what you're saying for you, and then you can also use it to add your title. So for example, we'll take a quick peek at this one. This was on TikTok, but could work a number of other places as well. I wonder if I did. Hold on, bear with me. Let's see if we can make sure I have the audio.
Receive a paycheck every 2 weeks or so. It goes into
so he's not captioning every single word in this case.
But the reality is
so
that
he's captioning like the individual segments that he has. So
tips, You as an
hey, don't use these particular
employee
things. But you
want to
can
make
see
sure that
that
your
like
work computer
this doesn't
supported that.
have the most
And third,
polish in
I
the
wouldn't
world.
assume
It
that I'm
has
not
though
entitled to overtime
31,000
just because
likes.
I'm paid a
I don't know if
salary.
I'll be able to
The
see it here,
FLSA,
but
or
with
Fair Labor
328
Standards
comments, I'm
Act,
guessing the view
governs
count
what
is pretty
employees in
high
the
as
United
well.
States are entitled to overtime.
This type of stuff
Many people
resonates, and something I
incorrectly
actually
think
meant
that
to
just because
include
they're paid a salary,
on
they're not
the
entitled to overtime. Now, in most
initial social
cases, salaried
fundamentals thing
employees
is
are exempt from overtime,
sometimes
meaning they don't get it.
doesn't
But
have to
it's
be
not
the
a
most polished stuff
guarantee,
in the
so
world.
you
And
need to look
sometimes
into the
extra
exemptions.
polish
Go to
can
the
sometimes
Department.
bluntly even work against you because it doesn't seem as natural and it doesn't seem as human. Um, and that's a big part. It's very forgiving on the video quality. You don't have to set up some huge studio. You don't have to have graphics flying in and out. It can be very basic and straightforward. You've probably noticed if you're, if you're on TikTok, you've probably seen a lot of brands and brand ads kind of emulate this format so they don't look like ads. So they don't look like just another person who's offering advice. One of the challenges, of course, is it's new. Adoption is just tougher. If you're, going to a 71-year-old attorney and going, hey, can you shoot a selfie video explaining this, that, or the other? It's just going to feel a little more unnatural. But with time, you pick it up, you go, find your TV voice or what have you. It's new, but once you try it and you get going, it starts to come naturally. And you can even do stuff like, hey, I'm going to record this raw. I'm going to send it over to somebody else to caption. They can caption it using CapCut, share it, and stuff like that. It can work really well that way. So this is the simple selfie explainer video. This is one of honestly only two formats that I'm going to highlight here. I will say though, too, also in this case, if you record your video and it was meant to go on TikTok, download it from there, share it someplace else. You can share these videos, even though if they're made more so for Reels or Instagram, if they're made for Reels or TikTok, you can share them on Twitter/X. You can share them on Facebook. You can share them on LinkedIn. They perform well on LinkedIn too. Repurpose all the things that you're creating. I'm going to go non-law for the next one, but this is one that bluntly we're using right now, which is repurpose your podcast, your webinar. If you're setting aside a lot of time to produce these key sources of knowledge, like for these webinars, for example, we put time in these, we create a deck. I spend an hour doing them when they're live. I don't want what we do here, the work that we do here, to only provide value during this 1 hour window, or for people who want to set aside time to watch a complete webinar. What we'll do is we're going to slice this up, caption it, and share it as helpful bits of advice that can stand on their own. This is probably, I would say, for podcasts, like the number one discovery vehicle for podcasts right now. This is everybody knows who this is. They probably don't know the
Quiet
name of
ass
the
so she can say
podcast.
hi.
You
What?
might,
Come on.
but you can see it's highly captioned. It's
Look at you.
it's Travis
What's
saying
up,
hello to his
girly?
niece.
How you doing?
Yeah.
How was
Yes,
gymnastics?
you can see
What are
they
you
have
wearing?
the
Tell
video.
them, Travis,
There's a lot of formats you can do, but a lot of times it can just be
Ooh, very.
it's
Ooh, how you
one over
doing?
the other in
Good.
caption. And you can run that the whole time if you want to too. But it is a really, really, really good way to extend the life of your podcast beyond what you have there. So I would recommend that if you are doing a podcast, to record video, even if you don't intend to share the entire podcast video. It's nice to have for clips for social because it really resonates with folks. So, there's a couple different tools. If you're recording your podcast, you can look at like Zencaster, Riverside. That'll record the media locally, your audio and your video, and upload it so you're not getting these glitches and stuff like that. That's dependent on internet quality. But yeah, a big part of what I'm talking about today, I mean, even the gist of it is if you're putting a lot of work in, whether it's the blog, the podcasts, the webinars that you do for clients and potential clients, stretch the use of those. So if you're doing a webinar on the big FTC ruling on non-competes, slice up some of that. Take one little clip and see how and use that on social. A single webinar, a single podcast could get you 4, 5, 6 social clips that you can cut and share out there. I will say to keep those social clips centered around one key thing. So if you relay, here's a point that I made, here's one thing you need to know, hit that. Or because once you start getting into, oh, here's 5 things you need to go, it's going to be 2 minutes long, this, that, or the other. Social video works best when you can get all the information that you need in a minute. A minute even sometimes can feel long to folks. And also dive right in. Like that's one of the big things too, is just to dive right in. But this is the format that you probably see so much on social. This is probably the #1 driver of social video these days. Well, I don't know what #1, because there's a lot of people just posting America's funniest home videos on TikTok, and that type of content, which is fine as well. But so much content on social in general these days is just a sliced up podcast that goes someplace else. So if you're wondering, why every athlete these days seems to have a podcast, it's because that's how you get out there on social. That's how you go viral on social. That's how you get brand opportunities and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, the same thing applies to lawyers and law firms. If you're relaying information, if lawyers, people are depending on you for your knowledge, for your insight. And if you're providing that in a podcast or a webinar, extend the life of that by turning that into video as well. You can also, even if you didn't record video for your podcast, I'm going to run way off let me see if this will pull up here. Getting into my photo library. There's Grinnell the dog. Let me see if I have a couple. So even if you haven't shot video for your podcast, you can also do something where it's like
we have a more creative offense than we've ever had, and the fact that these
you can add like audio wave files and stuff like that.
It's so much fun, and that's why the energy level is
so
you just see
that's
the
a big
dial.
part.
It just turns in our dugout, and these guys are just ready to explode. And as soon,
but yeah, that was a not great Mariners team, but you get the idea. There's a lot of different ways to extend the life of your content. You can use quote graphics and stuff like that for your podcast too. There's no reason you couldn't pull this from a podcast, which is already on your blog too. But it's nice to have the blog as that home base. You're already putting your podcast there. You're already putting your articles there. Use these social tools to extend the life of it. So yeah, repurpose your podcast, repurpose your blog post, repurpose all this stuff. If somebody puts in the work to spend 2.5 hours writing a blog post or even an hour, have your marketing teams or look to extend the life of that. They've already done a lot of the hard work, which is authoring the knowledge. But find a way to extend the life of it and get more out of it than you were. So this will be pretty simple, and just finding your workflow. I can't say it enough. Templates rock. Templates rock. Like whether you're creating these yourself or you're relying on your marketing department, anybody can edit a template. If you've graduated from high school, you can edit a Photoshop template. It's not tough. And that isn't to say you're not going to be moving graphics and art around and changing designs and stuff like that. It can be as simple as swap this photo for that photo, change that text, file, save, done. But also, yeah, I mean, lean on your graphic departments, your arts departments, and they're gonna love what you're putting forth too. If you're saying, hey, I don't need you to do all of these, I would like for you to create a template, one for a quote graphic, one for a slideshow, one for potentially a single frame teaser. Do that, you're done. We'll take care of the rest. That works great. That can be really, really good. Or if it might be, if you're a solo lawyer and I don't know, your high school kid is helping you out, have them create one look for your quote graphic template, have them show it to you, say that looks good. That's one that looks good. Let's just use that over and over again. We can change the colors, but the layout looks good. Let's stick with that. That's close to our brand. So again, even if you don't, you can save Canva templates, you can save CapCut templates, lean on those templates so you can move quickly. So if somebody publishes a post, you can create assets for that relatively quickly. You do not have to do all of these. If you're DLA Piper or Greenberg Traurig or what have you, one of these massive firms that we work with, then I'd say, yeah, find a way to do all these. Find a way to do all of these on social media. if you're that would be great. But still, if you were doing one of these, if you were doing this and you were crushing social video, even as a massive firm, or a firm with a huge marketing budget and a deep team, if you just said, hey, we're going to make sure that we are as good as anybody at social video, you would be ahead of basically every other firm. Would it be nice if you did all of the above, as some firms do? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But if you can find a way to just crush a couple things, that's great. And the same holds true for smaller firms as well. If you just say, hey, when we run a blog post, make sure that we have a quote graphic ready as well. And these things are great also for sharing the same piece of content over again. So you don't want to publish your post, share the link twice, call it good. The way that algorithms work, it's somebody may not have seen it. It may not have performed well the first time for any number of reasons. Run it back with a graphic this time. Run it back with a quote graphic. Run it back with a little explainer. Run it back with a selfie video explaining, hey, here are the 5 things that you want to know about the FTC's decision on non-competes. But basically, it's find 1 or 2 that work for you and just hammer it. But yeah, to recap, your blog's your home base. Have that be your central repository of knowledge, because you can control it. These algorithms and these formats and stuff like that are always changing. But if you network out from your blog, if you view yourself proudly as the editor of your publication, other people will see that as having value as well. So use that as your home base. If you author a piece of content and it's a deep dive on one thing or the other, reformat that for other places, but you can always drive people back to the blog. Again, if I leave you with one thing, know enough to be dangerous. In some cases on this, it might just be knowing that social video is big right now. And if you know that, that's dangerous enough to tell some people, hey, we got to do social video. If you're a marketing professional who hasn't done this stuff before, you may go, hey, I don't know Adobe Premiere. I don't know motion graphics and all this crazy stuff, but I can cut a basic video on CapCut and that can perform pretty well. You want to know enough to be dangerous, know enough to dabble. You don't have to be, a master of one tool. If you know a little bit about everything, you'll be in great shape. Utilize a few fundamental formats. There's other things that you'll see out there. You'll see different examples of slideshows or infographics or what have you. But if you take a couple that work well, that you feel like you can do over and over again and run that play, you should do that. But yeah, then also just use the workflow that works best for you. It may be I create these things on my own on my phone right afterwards. It may be, hey, I have my high school kid who's interning with me for the summer. They knock this stuff out. Or it could be, hey, I have the arts department create a template and then we're ready to go and move from there. But just find the workflow that works best for you so you're doing this in a manageable way. But yeah, lastly, LexBlog's always here to help. If you're not already publishing on our platform, we offer strategic consulting, professional custom design, advanced publishing platform, all of the above, so that all you have to worry about is publishing content. If you have questions, I'm all ears. I'll also say, I should have said this an hour ago, never hesitate to reach out to me directly, Colin, COLIN, at lexblog.com. If you're like, hey, I'd love to have you do this session for our marketing team, or love to have you sit down and talk with our group about writing more engaging blog posts, I'm always happy to do that. Or if you're like, hey, Colin, what would be really, really cool is if we could create quote graphics using LexBlog, something we've considered. Don't hesitate to reach out with ideas, feedback, requests. That's what we're here for. We live and breathe this stuff every day. So if you have anything like that, let me know. And I don't think we have any questions right now. Hopefully this was helpful. Take these tools for a spin. That's the biggest thing. It's never going to be perfect. You're never going to have it all figured out before you post your first piece of media. So start trying these things, start working it in. Yeah, find the workflow that's right for you. And if you need a second set of eyes or ears to bounce some stuff off of, LexBlog's always here to help as well. But thanks again for your time. We'll be back with another webinar soon. The recording will be in your inbox here shortly, and then we'll have some links to other webinars and stuff like that as well. Thanks for your time today, and yeah, goodbye from Seattle, Washington. Take care, y'all.